In every sci-fi movie you've ever watched, the aliens almost always look humanoid. 2 eyes, 2 arms, 2 legs. They walk upright, they breathe air, they communicate through sound. Sometimes they are green, sometimes they are blue, but fundamentally they are recognizably built like us. And that assumption is almost certainly wrong. Not because alien life would be completely random or impossible to predict, but because there is no reason the human body plan should be the default outcome of evolution on another world. A body is not designed in isolation, it is shaped by the world around it. Gravity shapes how tall it can stand, atmosphere shapes how it moves and breathes, light shapes how it sees, chemistry shapes what it is made from. Temperature, pressure, food, predators, competition, and time all push life in different directions. So if alien life evolved under a different sky, around a different star, in a different atmosphere, with different chemistry and different survival problems, it would not be trying to become human. It would be trying to solve its own world. So here is the real question. Would alien life actually look anything like us? Could it, given that life on another planet would have evolved under completely different conditions? Or is the human body plan just one of countless possible solutions, with no particular reason to appear anywhere else in the universe at all? And if aliens do not look like us, what would they actually look like? Not in a vague, unknowable way, specifically. Based on what we actually know about evolution, physics, and chemistry, what would a real alien life form look like if we built one from scratch using the evidence we already have? Evolution on Earth has run the same experiment over and over again on completely separate lineages for hundreds of millions of years, and it keeps arriving at the same answers. Eyes evolved independently at least 40 separate times. Flight evolved 4 completely separate times. The streamlined torpedo body shape appeared independently in fish, dolphins, ichthyosaurs, and penguins, none of which share a recent common ancestor that looked anything like that. This is not coincidence. It is physics and chemistry producing the same solution to the same problem, regardless of which lineage is doing the solving. And if those same physical and chemical pressures exist on another world, which they almost certainly do in some form, then those same solutions are almost certainly going to keep appearing, whether or not anything on that world ever shared a single ancestor with anything on Earth. So what does that actually tell us about what alien life probably looks like? And what does it tell us about what it almost certainly does not look like, no matter how many science fiction films disagree? To answer that, we need to start with the single most important concept in evolutionary biology for thinking about life beyond Earth. Convergent evolution is what happens when 2 completely unrelated lineages, separated by hundreds of millions of years of independent evolution, arrive at the same biological solution because they are both facing the same physical problem. The eye is the most dramatic example. The vertebrate eye, the kind you are using right now to read this, and the eye of an octopus are structurally almost identical. Same lens, same retina, same basic optical design. But vertebrates and octopuses share a common ancestor that lived over 500 million years ago and had no eyes at all. Both lineages independently arrived at the same complex optical instrument because light carries an enormous amount of information about the environment, and any lineage that could access that information had a significant survival advantage over any lineage that could not. The same logic applies to wings. Insects, pterosaurs, birds, and bats all evolved powered flight completely independently from completely different body structures across a span of hundreds of millions of years. Each lineage arrived at a surface area to weight ratio capable of generating lift because the physics of flight are the same regardless of which animal is doing the flying. The same logic applies to the torpedo body shape. Water creates drag in proportion to surface area. A streamlined shape minimizes that drag. Fish evolved it. Then marine reptiles evolved it independently. Then dolphins and whales evolved it independently from land mammals. Then penguins evolved it independently from birds that had already evolved wings for air flight. The ocean keeps presenting the same drag problem, and evolution keeps finding the same answer. This pattern, the same answer appearing again and again from different starting points, is the most important tool we have for predicting what life on another world might look like. Not imagination, not guesswork. The repeated experiments evolution has already run on Earth. But convergent evolution only tells us which solutions keep appearing. The specific solutions that appear on any given world depend entirely on what that world's environment is actually like. Gravity is the first constraint, and it is one of the most powerful. On a planet with significantly higher gravity than Earth, the structural demands on any large body increase dramatically. Bone and muscle have to support more weight per unit of size, which puts a hard limit on how large an animal can grow before its own skeleton can no longer bear its weight. Life on a high-gravity world almost certainly trends towards smaller, lower, more compact body plans, with wider stances and shorter limbs to keep the center of mass low and structural stress manageable. The largest land animals in Earth history, the giant sauropod dinosaurs, were only able to reach the sizes they did, partly because their skeletons used hollow, air-filled bones to reduce weight, and partly because the specific gravity of Earth sits in a range that allows very large land animals at all. A planet with twice Earth's gravity would likely have never produced anything close to a sauropod-sized land animal. A planet orbiting a cooler, redder star, the type called an M-dwarf, which is actually the most common type of star in the galaxy, receives most of its light in the infrared range rather than visible light. Life evolving under that kind of star would almost certainly evolve photoreception tuned to infrared rather than visible wavelengths. It might also evolve photosynthesis using different pigments than the chlorophyll that makes Earth's plants green, since chlorophyll absorbs red and blue light and reflects green specifically because those are the wavelengths most abundant from our Sun. Under a redder star, the most efficient pigment would absorb infrared, and a planet orbiting such a star might be covered in black or dark red vegetation rather than green, simply because darker pigments absorb more of the available light. The chemistry of life is the deepest constraint of all, and it is the one that narrows the possibilities more severely than any other factor. Life on Earth uses two chemical foundations that turn out, on close examination, to be remarkably well suited to their purpose: water as the universal solvent, and carbon as the structural backbone of every biological molecule. Carbon is the most chemically versatile element in the periodic table. It can form stable bonds with 4 other atoms simultaneously, and it can chain together into molecules of almost unlimited length and complexity. The proteins in your body, the DNA carrying your genetic information, the fats in your cell membranes, all of these are carbon-based structures, and the specific reason carbon can build all of them is that no other element comes close to its ability to form diverse, stable, complex molecules at the temperatures where liquid water exists. Silicon is the element most often proposed as a carbon alternative for alien life, largely because it sits directly below carbon on the periodic table and shares some of its bonding properties. But silicon forms far fewer stable, complex molecules at room temperature than carbon does, and silicon dioxide, the silicon equivalent of carbon dioxide, is a solid rather than a gas at room temperature, which creates enormous difficulties for cycling it through an ecosystem the way carbon cycles through Earth's biosphere. Silicon-based life is not impossible, but it faces significant fundamental disadvantages compared to carbon across the temperature ranges where liquid water exists. Water itself has an unusual combination of properties that make it almost ideally suited for biology. It remains liquid across a wide temperature range, dissolves an enormous variety of chemical compounds, and is less dense as a solid than as a liquid, meaning ice floats rather than sinking, which prevents bodies of water from freezing solid from the bottom up. Ammonia has been proposed as an alternative solvent for life in extremely cold environments, since it remains liquid well below water's freezing point. But the chemical reaction rates biology depends on slow down dramatically at those temperatures, making metabolism in liquid ammonia an almost unimaginably slow process compared to anything on Earth. The most defensible scientific position is that carbon and water represent something close to an optimal combination for life, not because they are the only possible combination, but because no known alternative offers comparable chemical versatility across a similar temperature range. If life on another world is carbon-based and water-dependent, what does that tell us about what its sensors might be like? The answer depends almost entirely on what kind of information is most available and most useful in that specific environment. On Earth, light is abundant, travels in straight lines, carries detailed spatial information about the environment, and is available at the speeds needed to detect fast-moving predators and prey. Those properties make vision an extraordinarily powerful sense, which is why eyes have evolved independently so many times. But vision requires light, and in environments where light is scarce or absent, evolution consistently finds other solutions. In the deep ocean, where sunlight does not penetrate, many species navigate using electroreception, detecting the faint electrical fields produced by the muscle contractions of nearby animals. Sharks detect electrical signals so precisely they can locate prey buried under sand based purely on the electrical activity of its heartbeat. This sense evolved independently in several unrelated aquatic lineages because electrical signals produced by living tissue are a reliable source of information where visual information is limited. On a world with a liquid ocean beneath a frozen ice shell, like Europa, the dominant senses would almost certainly be pressure detection, chemical sensing, and electroreception rather than anything resembling vision. Life in that environment would experience the world through fundamentally different sensory channels than anything on the surface of Earth. Echolocation is another example of a sense that has appeared independently in bats, dolphins, some species of birds, and even some blind humans who have trained themselves to use it. In any environment where sound travels reliably and visual information is limited, evolution keeps finding the same solution of emitting sound pulses and listening to the echoes. The specific senses an alien species develops would be shaped by the specific information landscape of its world, but the pattern of evolution converging on the same sensory solutions whenever the same physical opportunities exist suggests the set of possible senses is more constrained than it might first appear. Intelligence is the hardest prediction to make, and also the one most people most want answered. What drives a lineage toward high intelligence at all, rather than staying at the level of a fish or an insect? On Earth, the clearest pattern across every lineage that has independently evolved high intelligence is a specific combination of factors. Social living creates pressure to track relationships, remember past interactions, predict future behavior, and communicate. Manipulable appendages, hands in primates, tentacles in octopuses, beaks in corvids, create pressure to develop fine motor control and the problem solving that accompanies it. A calorie-dense diet supplies the metabolic fuel needed to run a brain that costs far more energy per gram than any other tissue, and a long enough lifespan to learn across years and decades rather than weeks and months gives complex cognition time to pay off before the animal dies. None of those conditions are unique to Earth. Social living, manipulable appendages, calorie-dense food sources, and extended lifespans are all products of specific environmental pressures that could arise on many different worlds. The convergence of intelligence in such unrelated lineages as primates, cetaceans, corvids, and octopuses on a single planet strongly suggests intelligence is not a 1 in a trillion accident, but a solution that evolution tends to find whenever the right combination of pressures exists. What intelligent alien life actually looks like physically is harder to predict than whether it exists at all. Hands are an Earth solution to manipulation, shaped by the specific body plan of our primate ancestors. Tentacles are an octopus solution, shaped by a completely different body plan. Both work. The specific appendage shape matters less than the functional requirement of being able to interact with and modify the physical environment in fine detail. Whatever that appendage looks like on another world, it would likely be one of the most recognizable features of any species intelligent enough to build technology, simply because the need to manipulate objects precisely is one of the clearest drivers of the kind of brain that can do complex problem solving. So what does all of this actually tell us about what alien life probably looks like? And what does it tell us Hollywood almost certainly got wrong? Bilateral symmetry, the matching left and right sides that almost every science fiction alien shares with humans, is common on Earth but not universal. Starfish, sea urchins, and jellyfish use radial symmetry, with body parts arranged around a central axis rather than mirrored across a line. Both designs work. A world where radial symmetry was the dominant body plan for complex life is entirely plausible, and its intelligent species would look nothing like a human with a modified head. 2 eyes is an Earth solution. Eyes positioned to give forward-facing binocular depth perception are a predator solution, while eyes positioned on the sides of the head giving wide field of view are a prey solution. An alien predator might have 2 forward-facing eyes for the same reason our own ancestors did. An alien prey species that evolved intelligence might have eyes arranged very differently, or might rely on a completely different sense entirely. The specific number and position of sensory organs is far more environment dependent than science fiction tends to acknowledge. What convergent evolution does predict is that some solutions keep appearing for deep physical reasons. Something like an eye, sensitive to whatever form of electromagnetic radiation is most abundant on that world. Something like a manipulable appendage in any species building technology. Something like a streamlined body in any species that spends significant time moving through a fluid medium. Something like social behaviour in any species that evolved high intelligence. The solutions are constrained. The specific shapes those solutions take are not. So let us actually use everything we have just covered and build one. Take a planet orbiting an M-dwarf star, the most common type of star in the galaxy, at a distance that keeps liquid water on its surface. Gravity is slightly higher than Earth's, roughly 1.3 times. The atmosphere is thick enough to support weather and retain heat, but not thick enough to make the surface uninhabitable. The planet is mostly ocean, with scattered land masses, and the dominant light reaching the surface sits in the red and infrared range, rather than visible light. What does complex life on that planet most likely look like? Start with the vegetation because it sets the energy foundation everything else depends on. Under a red and infrared dominated star, the most efficient photosynthetic pigment absorbs as much incoming light as possible, meaning it reflects almost none. The dominant plant life is almost certainly very dark, black, or deep red rather than green, covering whatever land masses exist in dense, light-absorbing canopies. Any animal life large enough to be interesting has to deal with 1.3 times Earth's gravity. That immediately pushes against tall, upright body plans, since the structural cost of height scales faster than the structural benefit at higher gravity. Large animals on this world are almost certainly lower to the ground than their Earth equivalents, with proportionally shorter and thicker limbs and a wider base. Nothing reaches the height of a giraffe. The largest land animals probably resemble something closer to the compact, low-built body plan of a rhinoceros or a large tortoise than the upright posture of a primate. Communication almost certainly involves sound, since sound travels through any dense atmosphere and carries enough information for complex language. But given the infrared-sensitive visual system, body coloration and heat signature likely also play a significant role in signaling, in the same way that color change is used by cephalopods on Earth for communication in a medium where visual signals travel well. What you end up with, built purely from the physics and chemistry of that specific world, is something that shares almost no visual resemblance to a human. Compact and low-built due to gravity, dark-eyed and infrared sensitive due to the star, armed with ground-level manipulable appendages due to body plan, communicating through sound and heat signature due to the available sensory channels, covered in a body surface adapted to absorb or reflect infrared radiation depending on whether thermoregulation or camouflage mattered more in its evolutionary history. Nothing about it looks like a human with a different head. Everything about it makes complete physical sense given the world it came from. That is what convergent evolution actually predicts. Not the specific shape, the specific logic. And the logic is the same everywhere physics is the same, which is everywhere in the universe. The real answer to what alien life looks like is probably simultaneously more familiar and more alien than anything Hollywood has produced. Familiar in the deep logic of its design, shaped by the same physics and chemistry that shaped everything on Earth. Alien in the specific details, because a different world means different pressures, different starting materials, and hundreds of millions of years of independent history producing combinations of solutions that nothing on Earth has ever needed to find. It is out there, and if it exists, evolution has already been running the same experiments on it that it ran on us. The results just landed somewhere we have not looked yet. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think alien life would look like in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video and want to see more, subscribe.